Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I think we can start our webinar. Thank you very much for joining and welcome everyone to this Employability World Tour event focusing on employability in China. My name is Floriane Lambert. I work within the EMLYON alumni team at EMLYON Business School, and I have the honor to be your moderator today. Thank you very much for joining the fourth session of our new series of webinar, the Employability World Tour. This series of monthly webinar is a world tour to meet EMLYON alumni and recruitment experts around the globe, and it aims at presenting the employment specificities in 10 different countries. We already had 3 webinars covering 3 different countries: Morocco, Germany, and the United Kingdom. The replays of these webinars can be found on the EMLYON alumni platform if you are interested to watch them. These webinars will all take place on the second Tuesday of each month until July 2022. They are free of charge and they are open to students and alumni. You are most welcome to join us for this world tour to discover these 10 destinations together. So today we will focus on employment in China, and I would like to warmly thank our 3 speakers, Hélène Wang, Antoine Lamy, and Timothée Barret, who will share their expertise and best practices with you today. Just a note on the technical aspects of this webinar. So we kindly ask you to stay on mute until the Q&A session, which will take place at the end. However, if you have any questions during the speaker's presentation, feel free to write them down in the discussion box, and we will then put them down at the end. You are more than welcome to open your camera so that our speakers do not feel too lonely. Also, just be informed that this session will be recorded, so it can be shared with our students and alumni who could not attend this webinar today. So now I turn to my colleague Jessica Lee from the Shanghai campus, who will say a few words before our speakers introduce themselves. So Jessica, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Flora, for the introduction. Good afternoon, good evening, alumni from all over the world. I'm Jessica. I'm taking care of the alumni and corporate relations from Asia campus. So tonight we are very pleased to help the Global Alumni Office to arrange the webinar for China. I guess China will be one of the popular destination for the young talents to looking for international career. So I just want to say a few words about the alumni network in China, in Asia. Actually, we organize more than 50 events online and offline to provide lifelong learning opportunity for the alumni to work with the leading corporates from the academic world to keep ourselves updated with the latest trend and development and the knowledge of the corporates and also the academic world. So it's really nice for us to work very closely with the corporates, and with the support of the alumni network, we can stay tuned with the school, also with the very strong network. So today we are very happy to invite and to introduce 3 distinguished guests from the alumni network. They all based in China for a while. Maybe some of them have been working in China for more than years. Some are relatively new to China, but I think today they will be giving very good takeaway for you to understand the job market, also understand the network of the EMLYON Business School in China. So let me introduce Mr. Anton. Okay, the floor is yours now.
2 seconds. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, hi everybody. So very brief introduction about myself. So I've worked for 20 years in Asia, 15 in the recruitment consultancy firm, and 3 years in my current company, Lincoln. So Lincoln is an executive search and talent management firm, originally from Europe, France, more specifically. And we are now part of an association, which is called the Talent Club. The Talent Club represents talent of different types, I would say, or profession. And they are namely sport athletes, football players, basketball players, people within the entertainment field, actor, actress, comedians, and us representing managers and leaders. As for Chinese concerns, so I don't really know how long I've been living in China. I mean, I've been living in Shanghai for 3 years, 2 years in Hong Kong, and I like recently to add my 4 years in Vietnam, which culturally is very, very close to China. So it's, you know, kind of behind economically. So yeah, 9 years altogether. Very happy to share, you know, my findings or our findings with you later tonight.
Thank you very much, Antoine, for introducing yourself. Hélène, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. It's a great pleasure. Yes, can you hear me clearly? Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here with all alumni. So I'm actually an MBA student back to 2001. It's almost 21 years. So I think it's, for myself, I'm based in Shanghai, and my personal experience has been working in different areas. My first 10 years, over 10 years career with a large corporate industries in manufacturing as well as the e-commerce, to be charge of the BD marketing, as well as I do, you know, been focusing on the talent. But most recent 15 years, actually, I'm working with consulting industry, focusing on the consulting, what we call people advisory services. So I ever worked for Mercer, one of the largest human capital company, consulting company in the world. I was charged of their talent consulting in China. And my actually current role for Russell Reynolds, as you may know, is one of the big 5 chief executive officer recruiting firms around the world. But I'm in charge of the leadership succession advisory services in China, you know, being responsible for selecting and assessing, and also helping those big companies, you know, to do the succession planning for their C-suite leaders. And we do a lot consulting projects, including culture advisory, organization transformation, and those leader development. So my next role, and I moved to Ernst Young to, you know, in their people advisory services as their partner, still focusing in this area. So I'm, you know, looking forward to sharing with you some of my observations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hélène. And now I turn to our third speaker, Timothée. Timothée, you're on mute.
Yeah, okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening if you are in Asia. My name is Timothée Barret. I was in EMLYON in 2010 for the Master Spécialisé. Back to this time. I'm in China actually since 2 years and a half now, based in Nanjing, so it's not too far from Shanghai. And I work for BASF. Maybe you know BASF. BASF is a chemical company, the world leader chemical company. It's a German company, and we have a joint venture there with a company called YPC or Sinopec. It's one of the biggest Chinese oil company. And basically, it's a joint venture since 20 years now, and I'm the marketing director for this joint venture. So 2 years and a half in China. Before that, I worked in Germany and in Slovakia. So different country, different roles. I started my career in automotive, actually, more on production, because my background is more on the engineering side before to join EMLYON, and then moved to different business role, key account management position within BASF, and more recently, I was also in charge of digital innovation for one division of BASF, and then I moved to China just before COVID started. To take care of the marketing for this joint venture. So today I will try to share also a bit my personal experience on the market and the recruitment in China, not from a HR perspective, but more from the industrial point of view, and trying to give you concrete tips on how to start a job there, and also with the difference I could have seen with Germany or Slovakia where I worked previously.
Thank you very much, Timothée. That's exactly what we expect from our speakers, to share their personal experience on recruitment and employment with our audience. So let's start now with our agenda. So we will have a first part dedicated to employment situation, industries, and employment trends in China. Then part 2, our speakers will share the cultural specificities of job interviews in China, and then they will share with you their top 3 best advice for if you are looking for a job in China. So part 1, we are now have the pleasure to have Ellen, who will share with us the employment situation, industries, and employment trends in China. So Ellen, your turn.
Thank you, Lauren. So I think the slide I prepared here is just providing you a snapshot of this employment situation, industry and employment trends in China. So I want to highlight this actually significant trend based on the Fortune. There are what we call Fortune selected 40 young Chinese entrepreneurs in 2021, last year. So they are actually the most representative in 2021. If you can take a look at the right, part of this slide, basically those 40 entrepreneurs in China, I mean, for this Fortune magazine, they actually coming from different industries, but a majority of them, you see, there are 13 entrepreneurs is from ABCDI. It stands for A for the AI, and B for the blockchain, and C for the cloud computing, and also including big data and Internet of Things. You can see there's a large percentage of entrepreneurs coming from this, from this industry. We also have representative from internet, from e-commerce, retail, catering, fintech, biotech, new energy vehicles, and high-end equips as well. We also have one from consumer electronics and application service. The reason why I want to share this is because those industries are quite typical industries who are attracting not only for those young entrepreneurs who can be very successful, become billionaires, but most important, that this industry are also attracting young talents, to come into this market. Because you can see in the last several years in China, there are, significant of development in this industry. The ABCDI is a typical example. So the business leaders, they are in many fields, definitely. And they would like to continue to create those value leading to the new changes for China's economics. And we can see that under this new environment or the new normal, we have a lot of talents who like to join this industry. They would like to contribute as well. So those, as what I said, these entrepreneurs, they are the atom of the high-end talents, and they are attracting the high-end talents to join the industry. Whatever you can see for those people, the young talents, but also we can see the trend who are attracting those talents or middle or even senior level leaders who transfer from the traditional industry and to those industry, internet and ABCDI. So this is a typical trend we can see from the industry evolution. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So now Antoine is going, as a recruitment expert as well, to share with us the big picture on the situation of employment in China.
Big picture, you put pressure on me here. Now I'll try not to repeat what Helen said. Already, you can see, my slides were not as beautiful. So sorry for the lack of contribution on that. But basically, I'd like to speak to you about three things. One being the talent war, two, the future of work, and last but not least, who is in demand. First of all, there is a shortage of talent all across the world, but in China more specifically, it's been about 10 years, it is like this. And I would say whether you're special talent with specific skills or you have half of those skills, you are in demand. And it's very hard for companies to attract always the best because yes, there are a lot of great people in China, a lot of great talent. However, there's many opportunities. And we see a tendency that there is a winner-take-all situation, a bit like in luxury with the best brands, or in tech where the best brands are getting everybody on board. It's probably because there is a lot more transparency in information, so everybody knows about everything nowadays. So if you have a great brand with, great company, a great EVP, employment value proposition, your chances are very high that you can attract people that you like to. However, if it's not the case, you better create one good one in order to go back into a more virtuous cycle, because you're going to struggle to attract the best. So you need to make sure you've got good unique selling points. And then digitalization is everywhere. Everybody is embracing the technology age, and the adoption of Chinese consumers is very, very high. Whether you're thinking of direct consumptions or adoptions into companies, internal app. So it's very, very impressive. And it probably goes back to 20, 30, 40 years ago, where already Chinese wanted to see real technologies as opposed to services. So it's been the case, since China opened in the 70s, and now it's very, very prominent. So massive digitalization, and also I would say very different types of engagement. I've been working in the executive search field since 2008 in Asia. So I started with before in France, on 8 in Asia. And I've seen, at the beginning, employees being very much driven by money. And then by time passes, they were driven by a lot of other benefits. And now I don't know what they are driven by sometimes. I think we're all learning with COVID, but clearly something new. Clearly, we are going to a third stage where it's clearly not about money, and it's even more than the skills that you will acquire and the different benefits that you will get. It's a lot of more complex things, and the engagement between employees and employers is changing very, very rapidly. So, very important trend. Don't have that much takeaway on this one because we are all learning from it, and I think it's probably all across the world anyway. Now, who is in demand in China? I understand, that from Europe and the Western world, a lot of people, would like to come here and would think it's not very difficult to come in China. It is difficult, but yes, you can come here. If you're a fresh graduate, it's very unlikely given COVID situation. But if you're already experienced and have something you can bring, for sure, you will be welcome here. You just have to do little quarantine, but it's getting a bit harder. Who is in demand? I would say international people in general, and be it Chinese who worked in international contexts, ideally overseas, or foreigners who are knowing China, having worked in China. I'd love to probably put a bit of a comment here that working in Shanghai is not that much China compared to Timothée. So I'm sure, Timothée, you will be able to relate on your experience in Nanjing, which is way more China than Shanghai, which is extremely internationalized. So that China relevance is very, very important. And on the top of it, I think it's all about cultural questions. So we spoke about IQ, EQ. Now I think a lot of things about CQ. So is, how you can learn about Asia, about China, knowing at the end, you're never going to know it, but that's okay. At least, you can grasp some part of it and be more adaptable. And if you couple that experience and that willingness to learn, you're highly desired. You're highly desired in China.
Thank you, Antoine. On this particular topic about culture, we have a first question in the chat box, which I think is interesting to ask now. So the question is, in general, is it compulsory to speak Chinese? To speak fluent Chinese, to get a job in China, or English is enough?
Okay, depends on your job. Depends on your job. I think, today first, if you're a fresh graduate, it's going to be very difficult to enter China because of the COVID situation, and that might remain for a few years. Now, if you're in a position where you're not probably in an industrial sector, and if you are in a big city such as Shanghai, it is not compulsory. Now it's interesting the way it was phrased. It's either fluent or not fluent. If you speak half, there is no point. Either you speak and you're fluent, and ideally you can read and write. If you don't, if you're not at that level, doesn't make a big difference. But in short, in many sectors and functions, it is not needed. Now, my advice, which I haven't done it for myself, is to learn it.
Great, thank you for the answer, Antoine. We have a second question, which I think is interesting to ask before we go through the second part of our webinar. The question is coming from Mylène, and Mylène says, I speak fluent Chinese and English, but my professional experience is quite special. Graduated in hospitality management and then worked 5 years as a coach and therapist. Does that experience would be considered as valuable in China? And apparently it is not in France. So maybe Antoine or Hélène, does one of you have as a reply for Mylène?
Yeah, if I hear it clearly, Mylène mentioned that she has the coaching experience, is it right? Yeah, but background is mainly from hospitality, is it right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think we can see that, because I do a lot of leadership advisory and coaching projects. To be honest, in China, we see an increasing demand for those high quality coaches who have both coaching experience as well as the industry experience. So like your case, because you have been working in hospitality for a long time and you actually have 5 years coaching experience, I can see there's a match in this market, in China market, like for you to coach those business leader in hospitality industry. Now we can share that, in detail offline, but there's increasing demand here because before we do a lot of development kind of programs or initiatives, but in the last 5 years, we see the increasing demand, especially for the one-on-one coaching, or even including group coaching for those top team in the organization or the chief executives in the organization. It's because they believe this kind of one-on-one or group coaching is actually maybe more effective compared with the other development approaches. Yeah, so this is, I mean, we see that. In last years, we do a lot of coaching projects and we see the demands from the clients, you know, whatever the industry, different industry, whatever the industry is booming, or even they're struggling, or even we see a large potential for the industry to develop. But the coaching definitely is the huge demand across different industries.
Thank you very much, Helen. Milen, I hope this answered your question. So now let's switch to our second part of our webinar today. So the second part is dedicated to job interviews and the cultural specificities in China. Timothée, we are going to hear you and sharing your personal experience in this subject.
Good. So maybe a few introduction words as well, just that you understand a bit the background from my side. So I work for on a petrochemical site, quite big, a bit like what you have in Lyon, next to Lyon in Faisan, you know, this very big chemical plants. And for that, I'm in charge of marketing and sales. So a lot of negotiation, a lot of exposure to different kind of companies, state-owned enterprise, Chinese state-owned enterprise, a lot of typical private Chinese companies, and also some MNC, some multinational with Chinese subsidiaries, so different exposure. And I'm in Nanjing, so as mentioned by Antoine, is a bit different than Shanghai. Shanghai is extremely international. Nanjing is, let's call it like that, real China. So not so many people speak English. I don't speak Chinese, by the way. I always have a translator with me for the negotiation or for everything I'm doing there. But I'm still learning Chinese. But of course, after 2 years, I cannot be as fluent as I wish I would be. Nevertheless, so I have all this personal experience I would like to share with you. It might seem a bit straightforward for some of the Chinese colleagues that are in the room here today, but I really wanted to share what I experienced here so far, and that you can use it as a tips when you have any interview or anything to deal with China. So the first advice I put here is that to show that you like China. That's extremely important. I think anyway, you don't go to China if you don't have at least a small attraction for the country or for the culture. You have ready to show it. I put Chinese non-official into brackets because it's true that recently you might feel that Chinese official are a bit more, let's say, it, aggressive than before towards the rest of the world. But it's not the case of rest of China from my point of view. I think most of the Chinese really like Europe, especially France, and they will really feel honored if you show respect to them as Europeans. That will be also a very good starting point, I think. The second thing is to show interest in the culture and try to understand local specificities or way of working. Sometimes it might feel completely the opposite of what you know. You might even at the beginning hardly try to understand, okay, what's going on, why they are doing this, like that, or and so on. Don't try to understand the why, because sometimes there is no reason behind, just the way how it is. So once you have been a bit in that context, then you will get used to it, and you will see it's also working on a different way, but it's also working like that. And of course, avoid any hot topic, especially on Taiwan or Hong Kong. I think those kind of topics can deviate very quickly at every level. So it's definitively not to be discussed, at least at the first meeting. Second thing, quite important, especially if you do business with China, is that the business is still done over dinner, over drink. You have to leverage a personal relationship. Most of the time with Chinese company, you have to create trust, and this trust you can create it only beyond the traditional meeting rooms or where you will have the meeting at first place. What is important is actually later, the dinner and the drinking session, I will say, where you can show that you respect the people in front of you because you are able to drink with them. And most of the time, actually, I win some contract just by doing this drinking stuff. And I can also lose some business just because I'm not going to the dinner if I'm invited. So it's still something very important, maybe a bit less true now in Shanghai or in Shenzhen or more let's say, international area. But for the rest of China, it's still very, very true, at least in my business or in the commodity business. And the third aspect I wanted to highlight in terms of cultural specificities, multi-layer dialogue. I mean, most of the times, what you will hear during a meeting, you have different way to understand it and different messages that are passed that are more or less obvious. And it's not always what you hear at first time that you should take away. You have to also understand a bit the context around. And actually, it's the same in the language. When you start to learn Chinese, you know how the language is done. It's quite different from what we have in France or in Europe. So you can have different meanings depending on the context. So it's the same exactly when you are talking with for business, or you are even talking to for recruitment, for example. There are different level of language, and the logic can be and will be completely different from what you know. So always try to have a different prism to look on the things we are talking about. I mean, at the end, it's to really stay open in everything you are listening. You can interpret or be sure that what you understand is actually maybe completely different from what the person is telling to you. So you always have to take a different perspective and try to understand what is the meaning of the message that is carried to you. And consequently, you have to stay open to people's opinion and way of working. And last but not least, I mean, it's not important for when you look for a job, but it's important when you are looking for candidate and talents. And I think Antoine also mentioned it. There is a clear war of talents today and shortage of talents. It's very difficult to find the right talents at the right place, especially when you work in industry, because most of the people are moving to tech company. So it's quite difficult to attract people. But at least in some family-owned business or even state-owned company, loyalty, hierarchy is really key. But at the end, it will be very difficult to retain people if you don't offer a competitive package, and money is still a very important aspect. You have a lot of turnover. At least we have a lot of turnover as well, just because, yeah, people are rotating very quickly, very frequently. And this is, I think, also particularly true in Shanghai, where we have sometimes a double-digit number in terms of turnover, and we recruit someone and maybe 6 months later or 1 year later, go somewhere else, and so on and so on. So it's a very dynamic market, and still in some part driven by money, I will say. So that's at least my personal takeaway so far from what I experienced there on a cultural point of view, and I will keep sharing some tips on the slide later on, more for the job interview.
Thank you very much, Timothée. That was very useful. And now we are going to hear Ellen sharing her views on that subject.
Yes, thank you. So here I want to call a model, which you can see in the right side of the slide. We call leadership span. It's actually a model that Russell Reynolds working with Hogan to produce that model. And it's a lot of interesting findings for this model about the cultural elements. And I love what Antoine just mentioned about the cultural quotient. And here I would like to use, explain a little bit for typical when you are looking for opportunities, career opportunities in China. What are some of the typical personality trends for those Chinese people? And this not only including those C-suite leaders, but also, it's very interesting for those, certain level of leaders and managers. So the first of all, what we call compare with the Western culture, the Chinese culture tends to encourage people to act in a more subtle way. The model here, which you can see, because when we talk about the leader, usually the leader will have those core leadership competency, especially for the top leader, what we call setting strategy, executing for results, and leading teams and relationship and influence. But you can see there are also what we call the 8 differentiator for the C-suite leader or the senior leaders. And the right side, what we call this more kind of loud side, including disruptive, risk-taking, heroic, and governizing. This is the more on the right side. And on the left side, compared with the loud side, we call it more quiet side, the blue one. Usually includes being pragmatic, reluctant, vulnerable, and connecting. So if we take a look at those differentiators, those top leaders, and one interesting finding about the culture is that, as what I just shared, the Chinese culture encourages people to act in a more subtle way. And the leadership span is a good explanation because Chinese people, they have a tendency, like they have a very strong preference and the characteristic to the left, the blue one, which I say the quiet side. When they are doing the strategy setting, a lot of people tend to be pragmatic. When they are executing for results, they can be highly reluctant. Here, reluctant means prudent or cautious. When they are leading their teams, they can be highly vulnerable because Chinese people always say, doing the self-reflection by yourself from the old Asian times, and Chinese saying called 吾日三省吾身. And when they're building relationship inside the organization, and they tend to be connecting, they want to connect with people, they let other team members to shine, to be at the stage. So those are the tendencies of those Chinese leaders, which highly connected with the culture in China. But you can see in the most recent years, I just use an example, the paragraph to introduce about these 40 Chinese young entrepreneurs in different industries. If we take a look at those young talents, young entrepreneurs, and those top leaders in the ABCDI or the internet industry, the high tech, those Chinese entrepreneurs, they are acting disruptively, comparing with pragmatically, the first side when they're selling strategy. They're highly disruptive. They can do something they never done before. They can be highly risk-taking. And when they're leading the team, they're highly heroic. So, from this perspective, you can see, even though those young entrepreneurs in this Chinese context, they tend to be disruptive, but they still need to be pragmatic, especially when they need to have a secure strategy to make sure the business can be successful or viable. And for those people, if you're looking for opportunities, career opportunities in China, we still highlight that you need to be pragmatic. When you are looking for opportunity, especially in this market, you need to have a very good thorough analysis as what I just shared about the industry. You need to be highly pragmatic by looking at your own experience, your background, your motivation, your tendency, your personality, by syncing them as a whole together. See what will be the success profile for you to look for appropriate opportunities in China market. And when we say connecting and galvanizing, this is also very interesting because Timothy just talked about how Chinese people tend to be relationship. Here, Chinese people are highly connecting, I would say, but for those top leaders, now research, we say they need to be galvanizing. The galvanizing means empowering or motivating here. So in this new business context, we want those leaders, but also for you to look for opportunities in its market, needs to find a good balance between connecting and galvanizing. So back to this model, why we have this model, we have the left side and right side, we call quiet side and loud side. It's because we find those most successful leaders, they can be very situational when they are, for example, when they are setting strategy. When they need to be disruptive, they can be highly disruptive. When they need to be pragmatic, they need to be pragmatic. Same as when they are executing for results. They can keep good balance between risk-taking and being highly reluctant. which means being highly prudent. Same when they're leading teams, they can lead from front, be heroic, but also they can be highly vulnerable. That means they can reflect themselves. They don't want to have any like blind spot for their own development area, same as the last one. So it's always important for you to understand the culture in this market, but also in any kind of organization to understand the logic and the culture kind of philosophy behind the organization. It's always for the leader and for you to look for the opportunity. Like you need to think about what are the differentiators you need to demonstrate in this market. People needs to be very agile, we say highly agile. People needs to be very kind of, being adaptable, which we'll talk about in detail later on. So this is my observation for this part in terms of the Chinese culture by leveraging this leadership span model. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. That's really interesting to have your view as a native from China. So thank you for sharing this. We are now going to listen to Antoine.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny, I was, while hearing you, Helen, I was thinking that's why I don't understand Asia and China in particular, is that risk taker and prudent, and I will add on to that impatient, but very patient too. So, that's what in Europe we say the yin and the yang, and then at the end we just don't understand. But yeah, I come back with a very practical tips maybe, rather than cultural specificities, which is probably more for junior talents. I'm sure that you guys, if you're quite experienced, you will know that. Firstly, as you said earlier, Hélène, I mean, Chinese people are highly practical. Therefore, what you need to do is to probably not put as much context as French people tend to do, and look and speak about very concrete and actionable things. If you've done something, if you want to prove it, make it very, very practical, therefore concrete, actionable. And I'm quite happy with that, having before scientific backgrounds. The logical thinking amongst the Chinese population, I think, is very high. Education in China, which is above all very good, promote a lot of logical thinking. You probably hear that the thinking outside of the box might, be lacking at times, but the logical thinking is super, super strong. And therefore, I encourage anyone having interviews to really be mindful of the cause and the consequence, because Chinese people will understand, if you're not being very logical in your in expressing your ideas. My third tip will be to KISS, which means keep it simple and stupid. It's an English expression. You will be probably working in China, likely in an international environment. I know there are more and more, if you're a foreigner, there are more and more foreigners working for Chinese companies. However, if you work in an international environment, and that applies to the Chinese companies, the Anglo-Saxon way of communicating when it's in English, it's usually the one which is the most adopted. So keep things simple and use what I call the 5 C's, which is actually 4 C's, being concrete, correct, clear, and concise. Again, going to the point and having some very practical answer is important, and doing that, in a clear, concise way is key. And lastly, I would, advise you to use one of those 2 methodologies when you try to relate and prove some points through stories. one is called CAR, and I think it's coming from PNG, context, action, result, or think of a situation, task and actions that you made, and the results. So it will help you to articulate your stories and to prove your relevance for a specific position that you like to have. On all that, in the most simple and logical way. So as you can see, those are very, very, high level, but very practical tips for probably more, for more junior hires.
Thank you, Antoine. So before we go through the third session, we have a few questions on the chat box. So maybe the first question is dedicated to Hélène or Antoine. So the question is from Tommy. And the question is, are C-level positions for international companies present in China recruited out of their countries of origin via search companies or out of China itself? And is there a shifting trend from Hong Kong to Shanghai for regional positions, Greater China?
Yeah, I can just share part of my perspective, then Antoine, as a recruitment expert, definitely can share as well. So basically, like what I'm doing in Russell Reynolds, because we hire a lot of positions for C-suite leaders. For those positions facing China, for example, as a China GM or China CEO, we usually recruit. We don't. The geographic situation is not the most important factor, we think. Basically, because the client has a very clear kind of success profile, or we do a talent mapping at the beginning with the client. Usually, when we talk about the client, we have some our like basic criteria or even like more selective criteria. So if we can do a statistics for those kind of senior role, kind of top leader recruitment, we have 50% of them recruited maybe from over or even over that percent are coming from the overseas, of outside of China, because the client will be more focusing on the qualification of this candidate, the experiences, but also they will also consider about the kind of cultural exposure to the market, and especially by looking at, the growth potential, because a lot of clients, when they're looking for the position, they want a leader, either, for example, to develop new business or even do a business kind of transformation, a turnaround. So they can, what they want us, they recruit from the similar industry or even from the new industries, the high-tech industries, to find someone. For example, the position like CDO, the Chief Digital Officer. So, the candidates, successful candidates can be from this market or from the other market. Same, but Hong Kong is a bit different because in our Hong Kong office, we hire a lot of positions, two major industries, one for financial services, because we have those financial services company, investment banks, whatever, private equities to look for the best candidate. Also, we help those like top retailers, the consumer brands, to find their regional GMs or CEOs. So, but apart from these two industries, there are not many opportunities from the other industries. So in these two industries, definitely we can, find candidates, either in the Asia Pacific market or even the other markets. But, we also recruit the talent in Hong Kong market for the PE, private equity. To be honest, the successful candidates can be from Hong Kong, but they oversee the whole Asia Pacific. For example, the business scope is quite large. And for those successful candidates, they can be also successful in the mainland market. For those top kind of PE kind of partners or managing directors. So, it's not it's not like necessary, but we can see the trend here. There are certain criteria that are critically important, apart from the other one. Yeah.
Thank you, Hélène. Antoine or Timothée, would you like to add something, or shall we go through the next question?
And nothing not much for me. Very,
Okay.
very in line with Helen.
Yeah, I can add something from my side, from what I see, at least in my company, but also a similar company around. I see a clear shift at the moment from overseas recruitment to more local recruitment. At least we even did it on our HR strategy, a clear aspect to have more Chinese, more Asian locally. So I already see that shift, because it's also, I think there's the level of education in China now is good enough, and we don't need to import some talents from Europe. It's also maybe cheaper than providing a complete package to relocate someone from US or from Europe to China. So at least in the chemical company, chemical industry, I see quite a shift since several months now at every level, including the executive level, to try to recruit more locally. But yeah, I guess it's maybe not true for every industry yet.
Thank you, Timothée. The next question is coming from Julia, and is: which are the best ways and websites to find internship offering for internal students in China?
No idea, sorry.
Hélène, do you have any ideas?
I don't think currently, because you can see the most update for the LinkedIn in China. I don't see there's better. I mean, leverage your network. If I go to the company web, I would highly suggest, and by leveraging the alumni network to find the internet. First of all, you have to identify which industry you want to go. Is there any company that you are dreaming for, or you would like to go first as your priorities? Then trying to find the network, alumni who work for this company or even have a relationship. And second, usually they have kind of internship application for different season, so just check their company website on a more frequent basis. So this is also my suggestion, leveraging with your alumni who work in this industry or in this company, go to the company website. Yeah, so I think that's very important to keep a close eye, for their update kind of internship opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Next question is: how important is age? Does being older command more natural respects? This use can be the case in the past.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Yeah, in China, I might just first and Timothy and Antoine. Certain industry, for example, internet and ABCDI, age is definitely a problem. You can see a lot of people, majority of the leaders are, very young, to be honest, at the age of 30s or even younger. So, but for the traditional industry market, because we are looking at the qualification of the candidates, either a more proven track record, longer working experiences. So in that case, usually the age will be kind of criteria will be different from the tech, high tech or internet industries. But there are certain, in this market, I would say a huge comparison with the Western European or North American market. Because if we enter into a certain age, for certain level of position, manager level or senior leader level position, and tend to, people consider about that, because they will consider how long will you contribute to the organization with your age. So this is one of the criteria when they are recruiting those positions, especially for the senior role. This is very typical in China. Yeah, that's my point of view, and I would like the other.
Antoine or Timothée, anything to add?
Yeah, one of the things, I would agree. However, at the same time, I think things are changing a little bit. and don't want to have that, a cheesy expression that age is in your head. But if you're a little bit too old on paper and you're very forward looking and embracing new technologies or new ways of leadership, then it's absolutely fine to even work in tech companies. And meanwhile, if you are a little bit too young in industrial company and the people in your team are older than you, if you show that you are very poised, composed, and I've got a lot of perspective, then it's okay too. So I think, generally speaking, very much agreeing with Hélène, but things might change at the same time. Tech companies are getting older, so there are also some people which are still there since the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with what say Hélène and Antoine. I think age is still a topic, especially for conservative industry. That's the case of chemical industry, for example. People with constantly refers to the age, but it's changing. Maybe a bit less fast than what we would like, at least for the state-owned enterprise. But for the other enterprise, it's changing. And at the end, it's also not impossible. I mean, in my case, I have to deal with that every time, and because I'm only 35 years old, so of course I have constantly the question about my age when I have to do a big negotiation or big meetings. But yeah, at the end, it's okay and it's changing. So no, I think it's not an issue here.
Thank you very much to the three of you for answering this question. So I suggest we now switch to part 3, and then we will come back to the questions after this third part. So the third part of this webinar is the 3 best advice from our speakers to job seekers. So we will start with Timothée sharing his 3 best advice.
Yeah. So the first one, and was actually already mentioned, I think several times, the guanxi. So the network is extremely important. You have to be connected. It's okay. It reflects also to the question where to find the offer and so on. I think you can find also in your network. If you don't have any network, then you have to build your own network, or at least to join some community. I think Jessica is doing a good job on the WeChat account that is available for EMLYON in China, where some offers are published there. So just leverage that and be connected. Something else that's not related to connectivity is more about the style and I think in China everything is possible. Even when at the beginning you receive that will be difficult to get something done or blah blah blah. At the end, it will always be done in one way or another. They will find a way to make it happen. So the execution, I think, is very important. Sometimes a bit too exaggerated compared to the reflection. At least I see with my team that they will deliver very quickly what they can, and sometimes it might be better to have think a bit more about the solution to provide something a bit more sustainable. But I believe the speed is key and is appreciated. So if you have someone that is quite reactive and proactive, and you are able to show you can deliver quickly small results or reach low-hanging fruits, it will be appreciated. So that's also something you have to keep in mind when you do some interview. Second thing is that you have to be digital and independently of your age, you really have to embrace digitalization. Everything is digital in China, and the maturity of digital solution is far more advanced than any other country in the world, I believe. This is true for work, but also for private life. I mean, a common example that you probably heard, but you do everything with your mobile phone. Huh? So during 2 years, I didn't touch any credit card or any cash. You just do everything you want with your mobile phone. You can load your mobile phone everywhere in the street or in the restaurant or whatever. So this digital maturity is here, and it's also a source of opportunities for business. So it's definitely something you have to show during your interview, because if you are a bit against those new technology or at least not using it, I think you have a negative point compared to your peers. And the third advice is to to be smart, in the sense that it's very important to not make your interlocutor, especially if it's Chinese, to not lose face. I think Chinese people like people that are humble and respectful, so don't exaggerate, don't try to show off. It's better to be humble and polite than to be let's say, the American style, where you have everything is amazing and you have done everything. I think it would be appreciated like that. And maybe one advice for some industry is also to leverage a bit the French touch, in the sense that it's not valid for every industry, but I believe for luxury, for cosmetics, or everywhere where a French industry is recognized worldwide, here you have to leverage a bit the fact that you are French or you have received a French education, because I think it will be also appreciated compared to other candidates from other regions of the world. So that's, let's say, my top 3 advice. Of course, I'm happy to share with you later on more, having some further talks if you need. I'm not recruiting or not looking for recruitment at the moment, but always happy to share more information. Just feel free to contact me after that.
Thank you, Timothée. Now we're going to listen to Helen sharing her top 3 best advice.
Thank you. So here I just want to summarize 3 keywords. Number 1 is adaptability. The second one is proactivity. The third one is about the networking in this market. And what Timothy just did, all those findings. The first one about adaptability is because one of the key trends is Chinese market moves very fast. You can see, I mean, a lot of industry, not only for those high tech, but also in the traditional, even manufacturing, consumer industry, it moves so fast. So this, with a large population, as well as this is a huge market. So we can see the new hotspots emerges constantly to feed different demands. And here in this market, the regulators can be very strong and bring sudden strikers to the market. Like you can see the most recent, what was happening with, the internet company like Didi, etc. And the job seekers for you, I think it's very important to keep the mindsets of being highly agile, I just mentioned earlier. And you also need to keep a very good level, high level of flexibility or adaptability to help you to seek opportunities in this market and be highly, what we say, capable in terms of resolving problems or risks. So adaptability is very important. The second is about proactivity, because opportunities sometimes will not come to you automatically. It all depends on how agile and how proactive for yourself. So being proactive is always appreciated in the job market, as what I said, especially in this market as well, same as the other European and North American market. So you need to be being very proactive. Is one side is what I say, being pragmatic, because a lot of opportunity, they may not, come to you as what I said automatically, and there are not too many good opportunities always being there. So it's very important to be very proactive, to keep a close eye on that, to do, to have a close networking with your alumni, with those industry experts, making sure you keep a good relationship, and especially people will share those opportunities with you when the opportunity truly comes, because we see a lot of merger and acquisition for the organization. We see, as what I said, the huge transformation for organization around the world. When this opportunity comes, it usually will have creates new positions. So the opportunity may be coming from here. So you have to be highly proactive and capture the trend of the market, keep a good relationship as well. So it's always to keep a can-do spirit with an open mind. And I think this is also as part of being proactive. And always think about, you need to train up yourself in terms of your learning agility, making sure you can be cross-field trained, because industry moves so quickly. You need to be highly agile in learning different things, and you need to be highly adaptable. This is critically important. When we use the word called VUCA word, VUCA word, I mean, from the talent point of view that needs you to be highly agile, needs to be, you know, to be highly adaptable. And especially when you see the organization has been evolved quite a lot, especially after COVID-19. And the third one is about networking. I think it's same as the other Western world. In China, same. Because networking is very crucial for you to getting referrals in the industry. When you have built several good cases, build up your reputation in one industry, it will help you to get the opportunity in this market. And those people who can refer you to the appropriate opportunity, this is critically important. And they may need sometimes, I mean, the headhunters is important, but headhunters, they also obtain information from the industry referrals, right? And second, it's not only for job hunting, but also getting you connected with the leading thoughts, or what we say, being as a thought leader in this industry. Making sure, as what I said, you keep a close eye on, you keep on learning, and you capture the market trends, and you make sure you're well equipped with the updated knowledge and those competencies. So this is important for you when you are building the networking, the opportunity will come, which you will believe that's appropriate. So that's my 3 advice. I will actually turn on to Antoine. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Antoine?
Thanks. As you can see, you know, I didn't follow your 3. I'm going to give 4 little advices. Again, adaptability is key, as you heard, and being decisive is very important. I would make the parallel with the way Chinese are building apps. China is ahead of the world in relation to technology, not only because people adopt it, but also because the engineers or the tech guys who are building it are following a very good methodologies of going for it, adapting and tweaking certain things. And then when it's kind of there, you know, 80–90%, yes, no, they decide and they go. All that in a very, very fast manner. I've been living in Asia for 20 years, so now I'm used to things going fast. And I think, you know, Europe is slow. So, but whatever, it's a matter of perspective and speed. But I can tell you, China is even faster than any other countries in Asia. And your ability to be decisive, I mean, your willingness and ability to be decisive will be clearly very, very important when you work here. Secondly, active listening. In order to learn, you need to listen first and foremost. And should have been actually my best tip for you when you interview. A good interview to me of someone is someone asking interesting questions and then probing and having a real dialogue. If you want to learn about China a little bit quicker, listen more, and don't necessarily listen what people are saying, but listen what people want you to hear. I mean, there's probably a bit of difference between Asia and Europe here. In Europe, we're rather direct. I mean, maybe not the Brits sometimes, but we're rather direct. And you know, if I say something, it means that I would like you to understand that. In Asia, it's a little bit more subtle. I heard it earlier. The idea is for me to tell you something in order for you to understand something might be a little bit different. So it's, you know, immersing you into it and enjoying it. And I forgot, you know, who said, I think that was you, Timothy, you know, loving China is key. I mean, show that you love it, show that you're interested in people, a genuine interest, and then you will progress in your comprehension, in your understanding of China, and be successful. Be positive. You're living not in your own country, so it's likely that things are unpredictable. And I think in anything in the world, I mean, anything you can experience, there is always, you know, an opportunity. I had a very, very small confinement. I mean, you probably don't know that in Europe, but in China, most of us have never been confined. And I never been, until this December, where I was going to a place, at the border between Laos and Burma, Myanmar. And, there was a case in a city of 600,000 inhabitants. Obviously, all the city was confined because we are going for zero COVID case. And yeah, it's a bit annoying. For holidays, I was with my family, wife, kids, and we had to stay kind of 4 days, queuing most of the time to get tested after tests. So a bit annoying, but at the end of the day, we learned, a few things, and we did other things. And it's not horrible, as what some of my friends told me. Your vacation was horrible. It's okay, Not everything is predictable, and we spend good time in hospital, knowing how the system works and how so well organized it is. A bit hectic at times, a bit annoying, but that's okay. So stay positive. You're going to experience things which are probably way more exciting that it will be elsewhere, and things which will be a bit disappointing, but that's temporary. And then probably the best advice which I heard earlier, be humble. Be humble. I've been 20 years in Asia. My wife is Asian, and I know I don't know about Asia. Chinese people are humble. They don't like you to blow your own trumpets, and it's not the culture here. And in general, I would say that, yeah, we need just to realize we are foreigners in a country who welcome us well, but that we can totally understand because it's quite far away from our culture. So we are doing our best to understand it and enjoying that part. But at the end of the day, it's a non-ending learning. So here's my 4 best advices. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you to the 3 of you for sharing your best tips. And I'm sure these are going to be very useful for our audience today. So now this is the Q&A session. So we have a few questions on the chat, but if you have more questions, this is now the time, if you would like to open your camera and to speak directly to our speakers today. So I will first maybe ask the 2 questions that we've received on the chat box. So the first one is coming from Vijay, and Vijay is asking, how does international students enter the branding consultation sector in China? Maybe this question is for Hélène or Antoine, or maybe Timothée, if you have any tips to share. So how does international students enter the branding consultation sector in China?
So is it a student? Because I can read, something about 10 years ago. Or is it not the same person? Sorry, my bad. I mean, I think generally speaking, if you don't have any experience, it's going to be very difficult to enter China. And even before COVID, that was the case for people, totally inexperienced. Now, if you have one, especially if it's a field which is take semiconductor, then it's not going to be difficult. Just a lot of documentation.
Yeah, I think same as the other countries here in China, for any kind of job seekers, highly emphasizing on the local market experience. It's important. And second is, as Antoine or just mentioned, you have to master the local language, making sure that you understand the local culture, context, but also to obtain certain level of local market experiences. It's across industry, different industry, any kinds of industry, they require the local market experience. So it's important to have a good start and making sure that you have a good platform to obtain your experiences, for you to build that kind of experience and skill step by step. Yeah, that's important.
Thank you. We now have a question from Si Young. related to paperwork in China. So is it difficult to obtain working visa in China? Does it mean sponsorship and extra costs for the employer? If so, how to prove the added value as a foreigner in the job interview?
I think it's, as Antoine just mentioned, because of this COVID, I think it's more challenging, even for those Chinese people who are living abroad. They got the foreign passport. They still cannot go back. I mean, here, this is the policy what I know until now, during the last 2 years, I think starting from the coronavirus. So I think if the situation is getting better, but for the working visa, I mean, if go back to the before the COVID, usually the employer will pay, for that working visa, but I don't think they will look at this. If you're a true talent, they don't think it's a high cost from the employer perspective. I mean, only by looking at by importing you to this market, by obtaining the working visa is not a big issue. I mean, if they, especially I can see a lot of my clients are looking for the talents whom it's difficult to find the similar talent in this market. They definitely would like to pay for that to get the talent into this market. Yeah.
Thank you, Hélène. We now have a question related to environments from Aurélien. Donc, so the question is, how mature is the work environments and your industries regarding topics about environments? It was starting with some initiatives and the startup when I was there 10 years ago, but I don't know how it evolved. And how do you think recruiters perceive if you talk about this issue, which is a more common issue now in France?
Maybe I can start to comment on that. I think at least from our side, it's extremely mature. Okay, the company where you are working for is also giving the pulse. I'm working for a German company where sustainability is extremely important. So of course it's at the top of the agenda, and we are actually doing in China even more than what we are doing in Europe. It's maybe not yet true for everyone. For example, I don't see it with my clients yet on an important level. For Chinese company. However, the regulation changed a lot, and you have a very hard push from the government on that topic, and also from Xi Jinping with the commitment he made regarding carbon neutrality by 2050. So this is something that will come, if not yet, definitely at the top of the agenda of every industrial company in China. Not because they want, but because they will have to do it, and they must do it if they want to stay open in the future. So I will say it's a good thing to mention in your interview, but you can maybe investigate before the interview how the company you are applying for is active on that, if it's something relevant or not. But anyway, sooner or later, every single company will have to do something on that in China if they want to stay open. Otherwise, the government will just shut down them very quickly. So.
Thank you.
When things change in China, it does change rapidly. So new regulation adoption will be very, very fast.
Aurélien, do you want to add something? Because I think we've heard your voice.
No, I wanted to thank, and I don't have a question to a particular industry, so it's maybe a bit too large, but because I think consultancy, for instance, it's rather for local people than foreigners. I heard that, and I found it logical, so it was more a global question, and I appreciate the answers, and to see that it's getting even faster than Germany for your company, Timothy.
Great, thank you for asking. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to open their microphone and ask any questions to our speakers? No? Okay, so let's switch to the next question. Julia is asking, who is more willing to employ Western, Chinese companies or Western companies based in China?
From my perspective, it truly depends. I can use an example, like when I was working for Russell Reynolds, that the top Chinese finance services company, to recruit people, the top leaders. Actually, they're trying to build some of the new business units, new business kind of sectors. But I mean, you can see the successful candidates can be either the Chinese overseas working, for example, in Wall Street for quite some time, have a very solid experiences. But we also see this trend, they hire these Western people who are truly the expert in this area. They either hire them as the top talent, the top executive, but also they hire the Western people as one of the chief counselor, as advisor, we say executive advisor. So it truly depends on, because I'm highly relying on the industry itself and the position they're recruiting. So yeah, so that's my observation.
And maybe to add on that, also a trend I see recently, at least in my network or among my friends, but Western friends in China, it's much more than before. A lot have been contacted by actually Chinese company to take some position in Europe, because those Chinese companies want to expand in the rest of the world, and they appreciate, of course, to a Westerner that knows the Western world and that also knows a bit about the Chinese culture. So I think in that direction, we will have more and more expansion of Chinese company in Europe. And in that case, it makes sense also to have sometimes some Westerners that knows a bit about China, and in order to develop the BU locally back to Europe, for example.
Thank you, Timothée. So just coming back on something we mentioned earlier, we talked a lot about the alumni network, the network in general, and the alumni network, which is quite strong within EMLYON. So maybe Jessica, who is here with us today, can say a few words on how the alumni network works in China, and explain how you can join this network if you've not already done so.
Okay, thank you, Flori, and thank you for all the sharing from the speakers and the excellent questions from our alumni. So actually, we have more than 2,500 students and alumni who are based in China now. So for now, we have two regional alumni chapter. One is North China, which is specifically in Beijing. The other one is East China, which is in Shanghai. So, and we have 4 key strategy alumni clubs: lifestyle club, social impact club, career and leadership club, and digital club. So the alumni events are open to all alumni, and sometimes even open to our corporate partners. So it will be an excellent opportunity for our alumni to network and to exchange at our events. So as just Flori mentioned, there are several ways you can keep updated with the Asia campus and also with the alumni activities in China. So you can follow the LinkedIn, the Forever website, Asia Campus website, Asia Campus official WeChat account. And also if you happen to have a WeChat account, you can also feel free to join the WeChat group in China. So whatever you can contribute or joining in our community, you are feel free to join and share. So maybe you can also email your interest in the clubs or the network. So you can feel free to write an email to Floria or to me. I can share you guys with my email in the chat box very shortly.
Thank you, Jessica. I think that's very useful. I will put my email address as well in the chat box. And so feel free to contact myself or Jessica if you are interested to join the network. So we have 5 more minutes. So if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it directly. No. No more questions? Okay, so let's say a few in a few conclusion words. So I would like to say a big thank you to our three speakers today, Hélène, Antoine, and Timothée, and thank you also to Jessica for being there today and sharing your knowledge and expertise on employment in China. If you are interested in international mobility, please feel free to join us for our next webinars. The next one will take place on the 8th of February and will be dedicated to employment in India. So feel free to register. The registration are on the EMLYON alumni platform. And we really hope that you had a good time with us today and that this webinar was useful and answered all your questions. Thank you very, very much to all of you for attending, and thank you again to our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.